So you wanted to have a garden last year, decided that since you couldn't go anywhere, you would get healthy and grow your own food, but found out when you went to your local nursery, they didn't have anything left. If that didn't happen to you, it happened to me. And gardening, I didn't start doing it last year. I just didn't realize how popular gardening had become. So if you are planning on having a garden this year, I got good news for you. I'm Dr. Hamilton-Stubbs. I'm a board-certified sleep specialist trained in nutrition. I also completed the Master Gardener program, and I have been growing my own food for about 15 years. I started growing food when my husband was diagnosed with cancer. I never claimed that, but that's what the doctor said he had. And this is what I was led to do after prayer and meditation. So I took gardening classes and learned how to plant a garden, and I also started working with some of my friends who grew up gardening. Gardening is easy. It's a lot of pleasure. It can be economical, or you can make gardening very expensive. I choose to make it economical and to keep it fun. And that's what I want to tell you about. So if you're interested in having a garden, now is a good time to start gardening, because before you can start planting, you definitely need to take care of your soil. That's right, you got to garden the soil first. Some people call it feed your soil. When I first started gardening about 15 years ago, I didn't realize how important it was to make sure that your soil is in good condition to receive your plants or your seed. So what I did is I went outside, decided I was going to have a garden, and I just put some seed in the ground and nothing grew. I did that again and nothing grew. So finally I decided I need a little help, because this gardening thing is not as simple as I thought it was. You know, it looked like, you just go put some seeds in the ground, you walk away, come back, and you have tomatoes, cucumbers, squash. No, that didn't happen for me. So this is what I want to tell you. If you want a garden, now is a good time to start, especially if you live in zone 7 or higher. If you live in zones 8 and 9, which would be sort of around the Carolinas and South, you could probably do a little bit more gardening. But in Virginia, it's still a little cold, so it's not quite time to put most things in the soil. But it is time to start gathering up the things you want to have in your garden, and time to start looking at how you're going to improve the quality of your soil. So one of the first things I like to do is take a soil sample. This is something where you just go around the little plot that you're going to use, and this is for small gardens. I'm not trying to address people who want to have acres. This is if you want to have a kitchen garden or a backyard garden, or you're going to have a community plot garden. You want to get a few samples of your soil. Go to different areas in the plot, take a little bit of soil out, and put it in a container that you're going to get from the agency that will test your soil. All 50 states, to the best of my knowledge, have extension offices. And these extension offices will be a great resource for you when you're starting out gardening. The Extension Office in Virginia offers soil testing, and soil testing at the Extension Office is usually a lot less expensive and more comprehensive than the companies that will charge you for it. But you can get commercial companies to sample your soil. The reason you want to sample the soil is you want to make sure that you're not growing your vegetable garden in a toxic area. For example, if you live in an older home, if you come back into a home that's maybe been built several years ago, like 50 or more years ago, it's possible that they use lead paint in that house, and there might be lead paint in the soil. That might mean that your soil has a high lead content, and you need to know that, because if your soil is contaminated with lead, or if you happen to be unfortunately living on top of an old former toxic waste site, you need to know that, because you wouldn't want to plant your vegetable crops in that soil. Whatever's in your soil will probably end up in your vegetables and end up on your plate. So get your soil tested. The other reason to get a soil test is the test is going to tell you what kind of nutrients you need to boost in your soil. Now, some people like to go out and just buy a bunch of stuff and throw it in the soil. That might work, but that's the expensive way to do gardening. And if you live near the Chesapeake, people in Virginia, that's not good for the Bay Area, because you will have excess nitrogen rolling off of your lawn into our water supply and killing all of those sea animals and sea plants. So get your soil tested and find out what do you need to add to your soil. One of the ways you want to get the soil ready is to collect up all the leaves that are probably underneath some trees now, because they should be partially composted. If you have some that you haven't had hauled away, then you can get those, get some of your neighbor's leaves and your old grass cuttings. If you don't have any grass cuttings, don't worry. As the year goes on, you probably have grass cuttings. Now, you can't use those grass cuttings if you sprayed your lawn with toxic chemicals. But if you haven't done that, your grass cuttings can be used in your garden, but you want them to die back. You don't want to put them in green, because if your grass cuttings need to decompose, it will rob nutrients from the soil and make it difficult for your plants. So gather up these things. You can put them in a place like in the back of the yard, behind some structure where it's kind of hidden, or you can dig a little hole and stick them in a part of the garden where it's going to compost and get ready for later in the year. If you are going to buy your soil, which could be very expensive, but sometimes that's where we have to start, you want to check your soil's content. I used to buy my soil all the time. Then I became aware that we need to check the soil's content. I just took it for granted that if I was buying this soil and it was made for my garden, it would be great soil for my garden. No, I found out that that name brand soil had a high lead content. Yikes! Lead is toxic. It's toxic to the brain, it's toxic to your nervous system, and it's toxic to adults and children. So you don't want a lot of toxins in your soil. I also found that some farmers feed their chickens feed with arsenic. Well, I don't particularly want to add extra arsenic into my garden. Arsenic does occur in nature naturally, and I think that might be enough. In some places it might be too much. So check your soil content and then add what you need. And if you're going to buy dirt or supplements to add to your soil, even if they're labeled as organic, just look up the content of what you're buying to make sure that you are actually getting something that is going to be good for your soil and good for your body. Now, here's another little tip. Now is a great time to start ordering your seed. If you plan on ordering from one of the seed companies, get a catalog and then look at when things will grow according to the time of year. So if you want to grow things in March, that's a different type of plant that you would be growing in maybe June or July. When you get your seed catalogs, look at the little chart that they'll have somewhere in the catalog that tells you the best time of year to plant those particular vegetables, and order your seed. Now, if you want to plant something that is best planted in the summer, you can order those seeds now. Just put them in a safe place where you will have them for the summer. If you are going to grow from seed, some people like to start that indoor, and that's what I like to do sometimes, if I have time. One of the things I like to do is grow some things that I pick up at the grocery store. Some things will just grow again, like green onions, celery, even your cabbage, but it comes out not as pretty as if you didn't have it from like some cutting that you used from the grocery store. But there are things you can plant your potatoes. These are things that if you get them from the grocery store, set them aside, your potatoes will start to sprout if they're white potatoes, and you can plant those. Now in Virginia, probably late March. You want to plant those after the frost. If you are going to get potatoes from the grocery store to plant in your garden, you want to look for organic potatoes because you want those potatoes to sprout. And once they start to sprout, you cut off the potatoes into chunks around those sprouts and put them into the ground. So here we go. Let's just review. You want to have a garden. You probably want to have it starting in spring of wherever you are. Now is the time to start preparing for your soil. If it's preparing your soil, if it's too cold to go outside and put things in the ground, just start gathering up the things that you're going to need. If you're going to be ordering some compost from the feed store or from a nursery, you want to talk to them and try to get that order in. If you order from a greenhouse or nursery, sometimes they will take your order and you just go and pick it up. So you don't have to worry about getting there before they're all sold out. Before you start ordering, look it up online, what you want to order for your soil, and then do a little research about the content of those products. There's some very popular name brand soil additives that we use to boost the size of our crops, and those things may or may not be what you want in your garden. So just do a little research. Now is a great time to do that. Then if you're going to have seeds, now is the time to plant, or to order. And if you don't know exactly what to plant at one particular time, get a catalog. Start looking through that catalog and order according to the table on the catalog that tells you the best time to plant certain crops. Now, some things I like to get out of the grocery store. When I get celery, I always try to save the bottom half of it, and it doesn't seem to matter if it's conventional or organic. But I like to cut the bottom half, put it in some water, and let it start to grow a little bit, and then I take it outside and let it grow. I don't ever bother to try to make it grow straight like it does in the grocery store. I don't mind if it's a little bushy. I just like the idea that it's fresh, I have it organic, and it's right outside in my kitchen garden. So if I'm busy and I don't get a chance to go to the store, or if I decide I want to make something and I need a little celery, I don't have to drop anything and run to the store. I just go outside, snip a little bit off. The other thing I like to do is get my herbs growing, like my turmeric. Now, I haven't always been growing turmeric. I just decided to grow it last year. And I was really surprised at how easy it is to grow turmeric. I missed the chance to order some because of COVID and the work that I'm doing in the community. So I was stuck with, how am I going to grow my own turmeric? I decided to grow it because I use it almost every day, and because of the pandemic, I wasn't sure if I would be able to continue getting turmeric from my favorite store. So I went to the health food store and got organic turmeric roots. Those had little sprouts on it. I purposely looked for some with little sprouts. They cost me somewhere around $24 to $26 a pound, so I didn't buy a whole lot of those, and they did grow. But I decided I would try getting some from just my regular international market, and now you can even get some turmeric root or ginger root in regular big box grocery stores. But I went to my international market and I picked up a few turmeric roots, and I just set them aside and they started to sprout. This is what I have from last year. I'm told that this is called a mother, and it has like lots of little, I don't know if you can see it, but little areas that are going to be sprouting. So here's one, here's some right here, here, here. That's what you want. They have a kind of little white color on it. It's almost like you can tell it's a different texture. That is going to grow and make more turmeric root. And the plant gets pretty tall, maybe about 3 to 5 feet tall, with beautiful blossoms. So you need some space is what I'm saying. Now, I did try to grow this once before last year, and it didn't grow for me. So you may have to experiment with it. I found that there was no difference between getting those roots from the health food store for 20-something a pound and going to my international market and getting them for about $5 to $6 a pound. Here's what I did. I found one that looked like it had some sprouts on it. I had set it aside. It looked like it was growing a little bit. So I stuck it in this pot. Now here's the turmeric. And it's starting to grow. And this is going to be taken out of this pot, and I'm going to put it in the ground in my garden. What I discovered is that even though it's a tropical plant, turmeric doesn't like to be in full sun as much as it likes to be in a partially sunny area, or where it can get about 6 hours or 8 hours of sun, and mine did better with late afternoon sun. So I had it in a rich soil, a place that was full of compost, and I just put a couple of those turmeric roots straight into the ground, and they all grew. These I'm starting now because I got the idea to put it into the root into the ground last year kind of late. I did get turmeric roots that grew, but I think if I had had more time for it to grow, I would have had a bigger harvest of the root. So I'm starting this inside now, and this is the one that I started last, and I have several that are a lot bigger. They're going to go outside when the weather is a little warmer, when there's no chance of frost. And in Virginia, it can get cold all the way down to about the first week of June. So I'll have these inside in a nice warm place. Now the other thing that's in this pot is a Chayot plant. This is a squash that's growing here. And I learned about this from looking at Dr. Sebi's videos. I wasn't aware of Dr. Sebi when I started my research on medicinal foods that help fight cancer. But I kept hearing his name, so I decided I would look him up. I do all my research on PubMed, where we have peer-reviewed articles, and the articles have been written by scientists who use a certain type of protocol, and they call it scientific evidence that this is working. Sometimes people don't do all of that, but they have some experiences that shows these things work, and that's called anecdotal evidence. That's not really rated very highly in the scientific world, and I couldn't use that in the research that I was doing for my peer-reviewed medical textbook chapters. But for my own personal use, I listen to what people say, and I found that when I reviewed what Dr. Sebi was saying, a lot of the things I had already found it in my peer-reviewed research of the medical literature, which I started about 15 years ago. So I decided that I would add Chayot to my diet. And Chayot is a wonderful squash that originates in Central America. It is full of nutrients. It has folate and choline, which are both very good for your brain. I don't know too many plants that have choline, and people like to buy choline supplements. Now, I'm not knocking supplements. That's for another video. But what I have found is sometimes food that you can get these supplements from have other nutrients in them that help boost the effect of the supplement. For example, if you buy a choline product that's been purified or manufactured to have the same chemical structure of what's found in nature, you will have the choline. But you won't have all the other nutrients that may be found in that plant that actually help the choline work better. So I believe that when we can get our nutrients from plants, live plants, the nutrients will be better for us. So what I did was I had an extra Chayot. I set it aside. I just left it on the table, really, and it started to grow some little roots out of one end, and it also had a little leaf that sort of looks like a tongue coming out of the two halves of the fruit. That's what I put on the soil. I just set it on here where I could actually see it. Originally, it was just sitting right up here, but eventually it kind of rotted and disappeared. This used to have lots of leaves on it, but those leaves have died, so I cut it back because this is the new growth. And when the weather permits, I'm going to plant this outside. Now there is a difference between these two. This one will grow, this is the turmeric, it will grow about 3 feet to 5 feet, maybe taller, and it doesn't need any kind of support. It will have a beautiful flower on it, and that flower will be pretty big. This one will grow about 150 feet. It will grow all across the yard and the garden, so it will need to be on a trellis so that it can grow up. And that's going to protect the fruit from little critters that might be on the ground who want to help you eat your chayotes. So I will plant this in an area where it will get some sunlight, but not too much sunlight, because it's in the cucumber family. I know people do grow cucumbers straight out. They get sun beating on them all day long. Mine don't do too well that way. They like to be where they can get some afternoon sun or maybe a few hours of morning sun and then some shade. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. But see, I've grown these and they'll be ready when the weather gets warmer, and they didn't cost a whole lot. I don't have to worry about them running out and I won't be able to grow my plant. Chayot is in the market now. Just go and get some, enjoy it, and then save one for your garden. You might want to save two in case you lose it, and enjoy this. For the Chayot, I found that the leaf and the flower are edible. So sometimes people take the leaves and you can saute the leaves and eat them like you would stir fry, and the flowers are edible too. I tend not to eat too many blossoms from my plants, but if you know how to pick out male and female, then you can pick out the blossoms so that you don't take all of the blossoms that will eventually become your fruit. The Chayot plant is something that I've read people in warmer climates, like over in California, they will grow their Chayot in a big pot, take it outside, let it grow up a fence, and then in the wintertime, they will bring the pot inside and keep this plant growing year after year. I'll let you know if that works for me. So I hope that helps you. I hope you can get your garden started and have fun with your garden. And I hope that you'll be able to grow lots of the things you like. I personally plant vegetables, herbs, and flowers. They work together because you need pollinators. Unless you want to be outside with a feather trying to pollinate all of the blossoms so that your chayotes will have fruit on it, plant yourself some flowers that will attract some beautiful butterflies. If you plant herbs like your mint, put them in a pot because they will spread all over. And some people don't like that. I personally could use all the mint that I grow. And what will happen is eventually the mint will grow a little flower. And those little flowers attract bumblebees, blackjacks, and a couple other stinging creatures. But they pollinate your plants for you. So you want your vegetables, your flowers and your herbs growing near each other so that your vegetables will get pollinated. Enjoy your garden, and I'll see you next time. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to select notifications so you'll know when I'm uploading another video. I try to upload on Wednesdays. And if you like the video, please share.